All right, so completing the square with hyperbolas is just like completing the squares for ellipses. We're going to group our x terms together. We're going to group our y terms together. We're going to move the constants to the other side. In the second line, you're going to see me taking out the leading coefficient of the x squared term, which is 3. And I'm going to do the same thing for the y, taking out the leading term, which is -2. And then I'm going to complete the square. So half of -6 is -3. -3 squared is 9. To balance my equation, I put that same 3 times 9 to the right-hand side. Complete the square for the y terms. Half of -10 is -5. -5 squared is 25. I balance that by subtracting 2 times 25, or -50. So I need to go ahead and simplify this. What is this all equal to? -12. Okay, so in graphing form, what is a hyperbola equal to? 1. So what did we do with an ellipse that was also equal to 1? We divided by what we had on the right-hand side. So I'm going to divide by a -12, divide by a -12, divide by a -12. All right, so I'm ready to write my final answer here. So 3 goes into 12 4 times, and my x squared term is going to be the -1. So I don't usually see the negative left in the denominator. Usually you can move it to the numerator or have it just in front of that whole term. Don't leave it in the denominator, though. A negative over a negative is a positive. 2 goes into 12 6 times. This is y minus 5 quantity squared, and this is now equal to +1. So I have a hyperbola, which opens which way? Vertically. So I have a hyperbola that opens vertically. And what's the center of this? It's +3, +5. All right, so we could graph this, yes? Excellent. So there's an example of completing this square. I think on your homework you have one example that in your general form up here, like you don't have an x term. You have, like in this case, maybe just a 3x squared, and you don't have anything x. So you just you won't have to complete the square on that one. Okay? It means that in your final answer, it's like x minus 0 squared, or just x squared. Okay. So what is this? It is a hyperbola again, because the a is -3 and the b is +3. Are all those numbers divisible by 3? Yes. Yeah. So we could just move forward like this, but if you wanted to divide everything by 3 just to make it simpler, you could. Okay? I could divide everything. So I'm going to divide everything by 3, and I'm going to group all my x's together. So if I divide everything by 3 just to kind of make it a nicer problem, easier to deal with. All right, so I'm going to have a -x squared minus 10x. I'm going to have a positive y squared plus 16y. And how many times does 3 go into 84? 28. There we go. So I've grouped my x's together, I've grouped my y's together, I moved my constant to the other side, and I divided by 3 all at the same time. That's impressive. That's right. So I'm going to look at my x terms, I'm going to look at my y terms, and I'm going to look for, here my leading term is just a -1. So when I factor that out, I have x squared plus 10x, and I'm going to leave some space. There's not a leading term in front of your y squared, so I'm going to have y squared plus 16y and a little bit of space equals -28. I'm ready to complete the square here. I'm ready to take half of 10, which is 5, And 5 squared is 25. Well, how much do I have to balance on the other side? What do I have to do on the other side? I have to, right, I'm going to add a negative 1 times 25, which is a minus 25. In the second set of parentheses, half of 16 is 8, and 8 squared is 64. So I'm going to add 64 to the left and add 64 to the right. So let's see, negative 28 and negative 25 is negative 53. Negative 53, is that 11? There we go. So I'm almost done. And the last thing I would do here is divide by 11. All right. So x plus 5 quantity squared over 11 plus y plus 8 squared over 11 equals 1. What's your x radius? Square root of 11. What's your y radius? Square root of 11. What's your center? Negative 5, negative 8. And which way does this hyperbola open? Vertically. Okay. So let's take a look at this third example. What type of conic is this? It's a parabola because you see there's no x squared term. Okay, completing this square is just a tiny bit different. What we're going to do is we're going to group the term that has the squared. So this has a y squared, so I'm going to group my y's together. I'm going to leave my constant term alone, and I'm going to move the variable that doesn't have a square to the other side. Because in my final answer, this is going to be a sideways parabola, and I want it to be x equals something, quantity squared. So I'm ready to take out the leading term here, which is a 2, which will leave me with y squared plus 2y. Okay, I still have minus 8. I still am equal to 2x. All right. So I haven't changed the value of anything yet. I'm going to complete this square here. Half of positive 2 is positive 1. And positive 1 squared is positive 1. Now there's two ways that I can balance the equation. How much did I just add on the left-hand side? I just added 2 times 1. I just added 2 to the left-hand side. So you can balance that by adding 2 to the right-hand side, or I want that x by itself. Instead, I'm going to subtract 2 from the same side. So I'm going to add 2 and subtract 2 from the same side, because my goal is to end up with just an x on the right-hand side. Well, I'm almost done. I have 2x on the right-hand side, so I'm going to divide each term by 2. All right, so I end up with x is equal to, these 2's cancel, and I have y plus 1 quantity squared minus 5. Now, going back and looking at that example, the way that it was originally presented, if you notice all of those numbers are divisible by 2, you could have started by dividing by 2. And then it would have saved you this step down here at the bottom. All right, so this is a parabola which opens in which direction? To the right. What's the vertex? Negative 5, negative 1. All right, so I want you to try one more on your own, and then I'll give you your assignment. So the y squared term is, the squared term is the y, so I'm going to group my y's together. I'm going to leave this constant alone, and I'm going to subtract x from both sides. So I'm looking at my y's, and I'm going to factor out a negative 3. Yes. You can, yep. At any point, if you want to do that, I'm just going to do that at the end. But yeah, you could have done it in the beginning if you felt like that would be helpful to you. There's no reason you can't. So then I'm going to take half of negative 8 is negative 4, and negative 4 squared is positive 16. So I'm going to balance that. So if this is a negative 3 times a positive 3 times 16 will balance that. So what is that? This is 48 minus 34, which is positive 14 equals negative x. But I need it to be x equals, not negative x equals. So here's where I'm going to divide everything by, oops, not by negative x, by negative 1. By negative 1. So your final answer should be x equals 3 over y minus 4 squared minus 14. So what is this? What is the direction of this parabola? It's opening to the right again. What's the vertex? Negative 14, positive 4.